Maybe one of the kindest things we can say about the religious is that they're confused. Most of them are just out of their ever-loving gourds, but we'll be nice and just say confused. Can we fix their confusion? No, because they're terrified to talk to us. They're terrified to actually consider what we say. They'd rather live in their insulated echo chambers where they say all the crazy parts in their heads and nobody notices just how insane it is. And this is kind of an example. So let's get to it. This is a video from Jerry Brandt, who I've never heard of, and probably you haven't either. The title is confusing, but we'll get to that pretty soon. This is what happens when people don't understand how to use proper grammar or punctuation, which, yeah, most young people have no clue these days, but you'd think that somebody as old as Jerry, he has to know better, but, yeah. Like I said, you'll see. He's going to talk to us about friends or family or atheists or something. Maybe all of it, I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see.
Another application of the questions in Ford applies to family or friends.
Oh look, another video that just starts in the middle of a thought. I mean, we're used to that, right? At least it wasn't in the middle of a sentence, or worse yet, a word. So what I get from this, and that's only from looking at the description, is that this is about questions to ask friends and family members who happen to be atheists. I could be completely wrong about that, I don't know, and I don't know that it really matters. A question is a question, but if this is how he wants to do it, okay, sure, why not? We like doing questions for atheists, right? I don't really understand his title for this video because it's incoherent. It's 3C Questions Family or Friends and Atheists. Okay, this might be video 3C. I'm kind of with you so far. The rest, though, that's just gobbledygook. Those are words that don't actually go together in a coherent sentence. But I guess we shouldn't be overly critical, so get on with it, Jerry.
Now, if I'm with a family member, mom, dad, cousin, uncle, sister, whoever it might be, or somebody I work with, I see them every day, and it's a longer ongoing relationship, I have to change the way I use Ford. If I started out with my dad saying, hey, tell me about your family, I don't want to do that. So the logical thing is I just ask questions that get me updated.
This is really why I hate Christians just reading from a script. You'd think that a normal, rational person would understand that, but I have talked to theists who are actually holding a script in their hands and just reading from it. If you don't have a solid understanding of what you're doing, then you probably shouldn't be doing it at all, right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have an organized system, a plan going into it so that you don't look like a complete idiot, but you have to internalize this thing and understand its efficacy. This guy shouldn't have to tell people, don't ask about your family if you're talking to your father. Does he really think that his followers are so stupid that they wouldn't understand that? Actually, I wouldn't be surprised, would you?
So let's say it's my uncle and I haven't seen him for a week or a month or whatever. Say, Uncle Bob, how's the family doing? So I still follow Ford, but how's the family? How are the kids? I heard your wife was sick. Is she, Aunt Mary, is she doing better? And then I go on to O.
Okay, we can all see what you're doing here. You are trying to disarm the other person before you get into the hardcore Jesus crap. Well, they'll never see it coming. Yeah, I don't think that's very honest, sorry. Plus, you actually have to have a system to be conversational with other human beings. That's kind of sad, isn't it? If you remember, STR kind of pulls the same thing, and so does Frank Turek, where they have icebreaker questions that make it seem, since we all know that they really don't, like they're actually interested in you as a human being. They're just not. This is just one more notch in their theological bedpost, but they can make believe, right? And that's all they're doing with any of it anyway. But with family, people you know, that shouldn't be necessary. You ought to already have a working relationship with these people. Why is that part of your system to do this with people who you shouldn't need a system with? Oh, right, this guy is selling a system, isn't he? At least that's how it feels. I don't know if that's actually true. Didn't see the last couple of videos. All right, whatever. Get on with your sales pitch, Jerry. We'll just rip it apart.
How are things going at work? I know you were sort of fearing getting laid off. Is everything going okay? So I'm getting caught up. I'm showing interest in them. And then there's one of two routes with R.
All right, the same goes for O as did with F. It's entirely unnecessary. Now, sure, for strangers to try to set them at ease, you might want to do some of these things. And this guy, I figure he's just trying to use the same system on everyone, even where it clearly does not apply, which is probably why he's at 2 upvotes and 13 downvotes on this video as I'm writing this, but, whatever. This really comes off like a slimy door-to-door salesman, and I've talked about a couple of encounters with those. People who just can't understand what no means. People who can't understand that there's no sale here. Why are you continuing to bother people? Because they're just mindlessly doing their job, whether they're wasting everyone's time or not. It feels just like that. And for people who are trying to sell things, be it religion or otherwise, you're just being a jerk. Stop it. Move on to someone else who might be more receptive. Better yet, get a real job. Pissing people off is not a good sales strategy. Just saying.
One route might be, I know nothing about his religious background. If he has any, I've been around him a lot of my life, but I've never experienced if he has a religious background. So I might ask him something like this. I've never picked up an indication as to whether you're involved with any kind of religious group.
If he wanted you to know, he'd probably have already told you. See, something like that would immediately send up a lot of red flags with me. This is not the kind of thing that comes up in normal conversations. That's the kind of question that only comes up from somebody who wants to convert me to their cult, which of course, that's exactly what he's trying to do. Because here's the thing. If you are related to this person, or if you are friends with this person, then either it's going to come up in the course of normal conversation, or it's none of your damn business. They might not say anything because they don't want you to know. Ever think of that? See, I don't go around just asking my friends what their religion is. If they want me to know, they'll tell me. I'll be honest, I don't really care. Now, I do know that pretty much nobody I surround myself with these days is religious. Not that I go and excise the religious from my life on purpose, but in the circles that I tend to travel in, religious people just don't tend to spend a whole lot of time there. It wasn't a plan, it was just the result. So this is still a big failure so far, and he's 3 steps into his presumably 4-step program. Let's see if he can make it, I don't know, a failure quadfecta? That would be fun.
And they might be, but they only go on Sundays, or they're very inactive in it, and maybe he had been raised in something. So I asked them, I don't know, do you have any kind of religious background? And he'll tell me whatever it is, and then I proceed as I would with anyone else.
Let's pause here for a second, though, before he gets to his D. Because if this was me that he was talking about, and I know I'm a special case here, but one of 2 things would be happening. Either I would just be rolling my eyes and saying, go the hell away, which I absolutely have had family members that I've done that with. Some might remember an aunt and uncle that I had many years ago who were professional missionaries and who literally couldn't hold a 2-minute conversation on any topic without bringing Jesus into it. They alienated the entire family and drove their own son away because they were so obnoxious about it. Those are people I have no problem at all telling them to go pound sand, family or no, as vehemently as necessary. On the other hand, I might take it as an opportunity to get into counter-apologetics. Oh, please give me your religious spiel and I'll debunk every last bit of it. And I've done that before too. And you know something? It actually has a pretty decent chance of planting the seeds of atheism in the mind of believers. It's certainly not a guarantee of success, of course, but at least it kind of gets the idea in there that their beliefs are complete bunk. Anyway, on to D, I hope.
Or it may be very obvious. I've been around him long enough to know that he is a member of some cult or some other religious group by their practices, by the things he says. And so I can say, it's been obvious to me, it appears anyway, that you've been active in such and such group in your life.
Or not. You can't always predict these things. That doesn't usually go well either. I don't like the cult you're in, so let me tell you about the cult I'm in. Yeah, nobody really wants to get into that, do they? If you actually respect your friends or family members, then you'll just keep your mind poisoned to yourself. But most of the time, they don't actually care about anyone but themselves, right? But I'm trying to save your souls. No, you're not. Not really. You're just trying to make yourself feel better about the things that you believe, and it feels bad to have other people in your life, especially in your close circle of relationships, who don't believe the same things that you do. This is about your own personal comfort, not about helping others. They might lie to themselves about it, but it's just not true.
Well, how'd you get started with him, and how long have you been involved with him? And what does being a part of that mean to you? So I'm showing interest in asking questions. At the end of that, whichever route I go, I still come back to D.
Finally, at least we're finally going to get there. I was afraid we weren't going to. Honestly, though, this all feels so disingenuous, doesn't it? Reading your little script, trying to distract them from your true purpose, and then hitting them with whatever D is. We'll hopefully find out in a second. And you'll notice that his question, how does that make you feel? Yeah, because that's all religion is. It's an emotional bubble that these people embrace because it makes them feel good. It doesn't matter if any of it is true. I can't tell you the last time that I had any theist that I've encountered in the wild actually try to make a case based on fact. It's always fee, fees, and faith, right? Well, here's how I feel. I don't care how you feel. I care what you can demonstrate with objective evidence is actually true. And I've noticed that if you make that clear up front, they are much more likely to run away because they can't handle you if you're not running on pure fee, fees, and faith, just like they are. So if that's what you're after, just ask for the evidence and say you don't care about their feelings. They'll just leave skid marks. Anyhow, finally on to D. Maybe.
I'd like to ask you a tough question. Ask everybody this. Doesn't matter what their background is. In light of your background, do you feel like you've come to the place you could say for sure that if you were to die today, you'd go to heaven?
Prove heaven exists, because that'll get you a deer in the headlights look, right? Because they have no answers to that. They're really looking for people who are predisposed to their religious beliefs, even if they don't exactly hold them. They are after people who really want a God to be real. But don't you want to believe in God? Nope, no interest. And that just leaves them with their jaws hanging open because they don't know what to say to that. In a lot of cases, they will immediately start to make excuses and disengage. At least then, you know the people who aren't serious. They're just following a script like this guy is touting and expecting a standard response. I never give them anything that they're expecting. Nope, I don't want a God. I don't want to go to heaven. I don't care about anything unless you can show me that these things are real with demonstrable, verifiable evidence. Most of them don't even know what to say to that. They either flee or do whatever they can to get back on their script. Don't let that happen.
And then I just carry that out the same as anybody else. But that's a little bit of an adaptation for family or friends, work associates, that I know their F and I know their O.
Then it's not Ford, is it? It's Erd. That doesn't really slip off the tongue, does it? Now, yes, it is obvious that we are getting into the middle of his presentation, but I went back and I looked at the rest, and I don't really think we're missing anything by starting here. We're also ending here as far as I'm concerned, because this isn't going to convince anyone who isn't already predisposed toward faith to change their minds, especially since it's also absurdly mechanical. It's like asking your wife, so tell me about your family or your career. I mean, how dumb do you have to be? If you don't already know these things, then you've got some problems, don't you? Now, that was the first part, I guess a decent intro, but now we're going to get into other things. Maybe that's where the real meat of this lies, because so far it just hasn't been at all impressive, has it? This is just your bog standard how to talk to an atheist thing, and those never go well. Maybe Jerry's going to surprise us. I don't know, but I wouldn't be holding my breath.
Let me tell you about what to do with atheists. When you're visiting with somebody and you talk about family and occupation and outside activities, and then you ask somebody, you know, do you have any religious background? And they say, well, I'm an atheist or agnostic, whichever it would be. That used to scare me, and just I didn't know what to do that, because I always assumed anybody who was an atheist was an intellectual and they knew a whole lot more about everything than I did, and I was in over my head.
A lot of the times, that's true, though, because if you look at surveys and studies, atheists and Jews tend to know a whole lot more about religion than your regular religious believer does. Atheists, I figure, because we've been there and finding our way out took work and research, and Jews because, well, it's just self-defense, isn't it? Other religions have been out there trying to kill them forever, so knowing your enemy is probably a pretty good idea if you hope to avoid the inevitable knife in the back. That's kind of the problem, though. If you've ever done a lot of talking with the religious, because you know that the vast majority of them are really dumb. And that's not an insult, that's just the truth. I've been looking for a single smart theist for years, and I've still come up empty. Not a smart person who's also religious and keeps it separate through compartmentalization. I mean a smart theist who applies the same standards and the same rigors that apply to everything else in their lives into their own religious beliefs. No faith, no fifis, just pure evidence that led them to the rational conclusion that there really is a God, and something that they can present to others. I'd really love to find that person, but I just don't think they exist.
I found something out. I'm not afraid of atheists anymore, and you don't need to be afraid of them either. I've learned that behind every atheist is one of 4 basic stories.
Oh, this'll be good. How much do you want to bet that none of what he's about to say is going to describe us? Because I haven't seen it yet, but I'm happy to play the game together. What kind of religious straw man are we going to get? Place your bets now. Go ahead and pause. Post it down in the comments, because I don't think this is going to be at all impressive.
Most people are an atheist for one of 4 reasons. 1, they were educated into being an atheist.
Sorry, that's not me. Now, it would be interesting to see if he'd admit that the overwhelming majority of Christians are only Christians because they were indoctrinated that way. They've never done any actual research on their own. They've never read the entire Bible on their own. They don't know what it is they're supposed to believe. They were just told when they were young, before they reached the age of reason, that it was true, and therefore they believe that it's true. I wonder what he'd say to that. That'll be interesting to find out. Anyhow, the first one doesn't apply to me at all. I was a Christian for a very long time. I was a committed Christian. I was a serious Christian. I was on fire for the Lord. Not anymore. So let's see if he has something to say about this before we move on to number 2.
Maybe in their science classes in high school or college, or a philosophy class or some other history class, somebody taught them. It could have been a teacher, could have been a parent, it could have been a friend who leaned in that direction, and so they just pushed them in that direction, led them in that direction. So they were educated into it.
You mean like theists do, right? Send your kids to a religious school, and granted, I did that. I was there. So that you never learn anything outside of the Christian mindset. It's like he's looking in a mirror, right? I have never seen anyone brainwashed into being an atheist, like they have been into being a theist. Of course, that relies on what I've personally seen, and if you've seen different, then by all means, let us know down in the comments, because we all have different experiences. Provide some details, because I can't even imagine how this might be done. But then again, what do I know, right?
A second category is somebody who had a bad experience with a church or religion, and they just decided to write it off. If that's what it's all about, I want nothing to do with it.
Oh yeah, we knew this one was coming. This is also not me, because I've never had a bad experience with religion. Looking back, all of my experiences were generally positive. Nice people, no problems. My pastor never touched me inappropriately. It wasn't the church that made me leave. It was the fact that none of the beliefs were demonstrably true, and I cared about the truth a whole lot more than they did. When I brought up my doubts to the clergy, they told me to stop thinking about it. God's real because I say so. You just have to have faith. Except by that point, all my faith was gone, and I was headed out the door into reality. Maybe something might have gone differently if they had tried to justify their beliefs with fact, if they'd had any evidence to present, but none of them did. None of them even tried. So, still, not me.
Some become atheists because they have a bad experience in life. They've suffered some loss or something.
Not me. Never had a problem. It wasn't experiences at all that drove me from religion, but the complete and utter lack of any evidence that any of it was defensibly and demonstrably true. The truth is what matters, and religion didn't have any of that. So that's 3 down, and none of them are even close. He's probably going to say something more about this, so I guess we'll wait, but I'm kind of curious what his number 4 is going to be. How about you?
And they were trying to figure out if there's a God of love, and why did he let this happen? This is bad. So this happened and it's bad, so there can't be a God of love or he wouldn't have let this happen. So I just dismiss God.
I see no reason to think that there is a God of any kind in the first place. What we're really looking at here are bald rationalizations. They are desperate to explain away all the reasons that people are actually walking away from their beliefs, and they can't accept the actual reasons, that there just isn't any evidence for any of it, so they just make up more comforting nonsense, because none of this is about the truth. None of this is about facts. This is just about spinning the most comforting yarn that you can. This is damage control. This is trying to keep as many butts in the pews as they can so they can keep making as much money as they can because they don't want to go out and get real jobs. It is ridiculously obvious what's going on, and it's sad that they can't see it.
Or the fourth major reason, I'm going to have to change my lifestyle. I can't keep doing what I'm doing the way I do it, when I do it, how I want to do it, and with whomever I want to do it.
Yeah, I should have guessed that one. Again, not me. Almost nothing changed between me leaving religion and today. I rejected it because of the complete lack of evidence to support any of it, and I continued to hold the vast majority of the same views, with the sole exception of things that I accepted only based on my religion. Those I reevaluated and adopted views based on reality, not on religion. Otherwise, people who knew me then, if they're still kicking out there, they'd still recognize me as generally being the same as I was when I was religious. I'm not a bigot against gay people. I don't hate women. I don't hate trans people. But those were only based on God hates them. So I got rid of that. But pretty much everything else, yep, that's me still. So let's finish out the last of this fourth point and take a break for a week, because this is really starting to make me shake my head.
So I know enough. I do not want to give up my way of life. So it's easier just to get rid of God rather than have to deal with those changes.
Except in my case, that didn't happen. Oh, sure, for things like disliking gay people because God says they're bad, that went away because once you take God out of the picture, there is no way to rationally justify that any longer. People are just people. It's not what people are, it's what they do that matters. It's why I don't hate, and hate is really too strong a word for it. Maybe strongly dislike, disapprove of, I don't know. But it's why I don't hate Muslims or Hindus or whatever else anymore. Now, the stupid crap they do, yes, hate the sin, not the sinner, that kind of thing. I don't much care what people do in the privacy of their own homes, so long as it's legal and consensual. It doesn't bother me one bit. I might not have to respect it, but I don't hate it. I might not ride you around on my shoulders, but I don't really give a crap what you do. As long as what you are doing doesn't affect me or those I care about or society in general, have fun. That's not something that you can really do as a theist, though, at least most of the time. So that changed. But it had nothing at all to do with who I really am. I just stopped being a religious asshole when I jettisoned all the religious crap. And I think that's a good thing. And that's where we're going to leave it for the week. Otherwise, this is going to get really, really long. So far, nothing that he said really impresses me. It's a lot of bog standard theist talking points aimed straight at others who already believe, probably so he can sell a book or a course or whatever. I don't know if he's doing that. I didn't go look, but that's what most of them are trying to do. Now, granted, I haven't done the other videos in this series, but just based on what happens in 3B, because that was the only one that showed up in my recommendations, none of these things are really any better. They're not saying anything that we couldn't get out of this, that we couldn't glean out of just this part. So that's why I didn't feel the need to go back and start off with 3A, because, whatever, we do enough crap around here already. Sometimes starting at the beginning of something doesn't really help, and I really can't imagine that it would have here, but what the heck do I know, right? Anyway, that's it. What kind of vibes are you getting off of this so far? Let me know down in the comments. Clearly, this is someone who doesn't understand atheism and hasn't talked to any actual atheists, but I think we understand that as generally true across the religious board. They don't know anything, and since they're only talking to each other, that never gets corrected. They're just wrong a lot, but that's hardly a surprise, right? So we'll come back and revisit this again next week. Any predictions for what comes up next? Let's see how psychic you all are. For me, though, until next week, I'm out.